Welcome to the Warning Track Power Hour. I am Dr. Andrew Scaff. He is Dr. Michael Werman, Esquire. We're here this week to talk about last week in the NFL, which was the week 10. We'll review our picks from last week, which seem to be improving maybe a bit on our locks of the week, at least anyway. We'll give a little preview for next week's NFL games and new picks. But we'll start today with a bit of an off story. We have the Chiefs were in a bye week, so there's less that we would typically talk about, at least anyway, on this episode. So, Mike, there were a rash of firings in college and the pros, actually, after poor performance of the last week. But maybe most interesting, at least for us to talk about anyway, can you envision a scenario where someone would pay you $76 million to not do your job?
If I were somehow hired as the coach of a major university's football team, I think maybe they would pay me that much because I would do a terrible job because I wouldn't care.
Well,
And
you would accept the going rate for a
yeah,
major college
somehow they'd
program.
hire me. I would actually try and like draw up good plays and stuff, but I would be a terrible recruiter. I wouldn't I would maybe I'd be okay because I'd just say, well, we'll work smarter, not harder, and we'll and I delegate stuff to my underlings, and then just be the figurehead of of the organization. Maybe I could do that, but then I would guess though that probably I wouldn't do that well, and I would get fired. And if they paid me all that much money, they probably wouldn't want me back, and I wouldn't really want to go work anywhere else if I was getting that much money to do nothing, even if it was coach football.
Yeah.
So I just sit on that pile of cash. Although there might be some clause in the contract that says that you can't just sit on the money, you have to try to mitigate the damages. So like you have to try to go get another job in football, and then they would pay you like instead of maybe they owe Jimbo 8 million a year or something like that. They might only, since if you could become a
It's
offensive
almost 10 because
coordinator.
it's the remaining 8 years of his contract. It's
Okay, so 10,
million.
so not 9.5 million probably.
Yeah.
So like if you can get a job coaching someplace else for 1 million a year, maybe they'd only pay 8.5, and they'd want that would be okay or something.
Yeah. But
Uh,
when you just take a job like coaching a high school somewhere and then
yeah, it's one
get
of
like
those
a
things.
100K a year and then
Some contracts have it that you have to try to get a job that is in your field that is the best you can get, and they might say, well, you can do better than coaching high school, you should be a college coach or an NFL coordinator or something like that, and that's how much money we're gonna pay you, minus. So like if you so they might, so there are those things in the way. It's like those contracts are going to be argued over a lot. So like when they say, oh, he's got $76 million left on his contract, that doesn't mean that he's going to get all that. Oftentimes they have also a buyout. They'll just say, well, we'll give you 40 million.
I think I
Also,
think the 76 million is the buyout.
what's the buyout? Well, they okay. So well, maybe they'll pay him. I guess they already negotiate that. So I don't know. Maybe
Yeah. But I think he was only 2 years into this 10-year extension that he had. So
that was dumb. I
that's
don't know
very
why.
early. And I mean, we've seen this with just recently with the Raiders too, where they were willing to eat an excessive amount of money just to like not have McDaniels
Josh McDaniels
down there
around.
anymore.
Yeah.
So apparently this is like a thing that happens
I'd like to be that
out there.
hated to have people pay me to really go away.
Just to go away, not just to not work here, go somewhere else, Mike.
The old Dr. Seuss book, Marvin K. Mooney, will you please go now? Would be something that
Maybe that was what was playing in Jimbo's office when he came in that day.
I don't. You can go by boat or you can go by plane. I can't remember exactly all the rhymes in Marvin K. Mooney. That wasn't one of the ones that I read a lot when I was a kid. But yeah, it would be a nice situation to be in. If I guess you'd be hated by a lot of people. Texas A&M has a large fan base, and you probably get food walking down the street. But maybe that would probably be only for a year or so.
But that's maybe in Texas, but I mean, when he's actually
Nobody would recognize Jimbo Fisher if you just moved to someplace outside of Texas
Yeah,
and didn't
just
wear
go.
coaching attire all the time.
He's wearing a headset while wearing A&M gear,
A&M gear, yeah.
then he might get. He's more likely to be recognized, I would
Or a
guess.
shirt that says coach on the back.
Yeah,
Coach Fisher, Jimbo.
yeah, that's me, Jimbo.
He's got one of those kind of mechanic style shirt that has Jimbo there. Do you know Jimbo Fisher's full name?
Is it not Jimbo?
No, it's not. It's well. Do you think Do you
Is it?
think
Is it? Is it James Bo?
James? Do you think there is a James in his name, or is it simply called Jimbo for some other reason?
I would say it is James, but I.
Okay, his name is John James Jimbo Fisher Jr. According to Wikipedia, John James Fisher Jr. I like how he's John James Jimbo Fisher Jr.
Junior. Was his dad also Jimbo then?
I don't know. His dad, I don't know what his
Did he
dad
inherit the
was.
nickname? That's the question. Was the
Uh,
nickname also inherited?
well, Jimbo Fisher was born fairly close to me. He was born in Clarksburg, West Virginia, which isn't very far from Morgantown, which is only about an hour. So it's about it's about an hour and a half's drive from where I'm from, where the Jimbo Fisher National Historic Site would be located if he were became a real storied coach. But he's from this kind of Appalachia, Western Pennsylvania, Ohio area where it seems like all the football coaches are born and all the weird quarterbacks play. Yeah, I was just looking up. He had Les Miles on one of his staffs, or was on the staff of Les Miles. Les Miles, of course, is from that area. He's from a Cleveland suburb, so it's like Cleveland, Pittsburgh, West Virginia. That little corner is where basically every college football coach is born. I guess there's a lot of Southern. If they're not like a down home Southern good old boy, they seem to be the white coaches anyway. Seem to be from that kind of Appalachia Rust Belt area. But maybe we instead of talking about Jimbo, what do you? I think what the most interesting firing I think is the firing today actually of Buffalo Bills offensive coordinator Ken Dorsey. Do you think that was deserved, or is Dorsey just the fall guy? Buffalo did lose to the Denver Broncos on a second field goal attempt when they missed the first one because they kind of did something stupid. They wanted to be cute and run down all the seconds. I guess because they thought, well, if there are 13 seconds left on the clock, Buffalo is going to score. So let's try to kick it as time expires. But the problem was they were behind. So if they didn't make it, they were going to lose. And it's like if it was a tie game, maybe that's what you do.
Yeah.
Because at worst, you're going to overtime.
Yeah.
But
Denver was out of timeouts though, so they had to do this thing where they had to like do the last snap and kneel down and then run off the field. Well, the kicking team had to run on the field because there wasn't a lot of time between there. And then Buffalo apparently did not get enough guys off the field. And Denver actually, when they were set and took the field goal attempt, they missed the field goal, but Buffalo had
12 guys on the field. And they were all lined up 12. It wasn't that they were trying to get one guy off. They just didn't count right. And they had 12 across. They had 11 across and then one guy in the back. And I guess the one guy in the back counted 11. He says, okay, I think we're all right. But he forgot to count himself.
He forgot himself. Yes. But it was crazy was they actually missed the field goal though. That's what I couldn't believe was
because they had that kind of scramble drill, and that sometimes it's not as it was windy, and you can see that ball kind of
and they'd missed an extra point earlier in the game, and they had an additional failed extra point.
Yeah.
But more annoyingly was that they missed the over on that game too because of the two missed extra points earlier in the game.
Well, I got the under on that one, so I was right.
I had the over, Mike, and I'm mad about it.
Well, I predicted that ineptitude, so that's why I picked the under. So I feel pretty good about it.
But you would think after the last drive that maybe Buffalo would have fired their defensive coordinator because there were two horrible penalties that really cost them the game at the end, and it wasn't the offensive coordinator that caused the failure of that,
That
at least anyway.
the pass interference wasn't quite their fault because the ball was so woefully underthrown and
Yeah.
badly thrown that the defensive guy, I guess he should have turned his head around, but he was just kind of in the wrong place at the wrong time. That's just one of those unfortunate things
Yeah.
where you can almost throw yourself into a pass interference penalty if you feel like it.
Yeah.
But the other penalty
With the 12 men on the field.
with the 12 men on the field is
Deserved. Yes.
yeah, that's really bad.
Yeah.
And because it wasn't you weren't the ones who were scrambling, it was the other team that was scrambling to make sure they got everybody on the field. It was
Yeah.
like you could have just had your guys stay the way they
Yeah.
were.
I don't know. I don't know if they switched personnel or if they left the same personnel
Well,
on.
if the offense if the offense has substitutions, the defense can substitute.
But I don't know if they did. I didn't. When they showed it live, I was just watching the offense, run off the field
Yeah,
and the
I didn't notice either. I
kicking
think
team run
probably
on
they
the field.
did.
I didn't notice if the defense did the same thing, and that's how maybe they had like the personnel shuffle is where they ended up with the 12th man,
Apparently,
or if they just
somebody
left the
on
same.
defense, at least one person on defense, came from the sideline and went and joined them.
Right,
So,
must have,
but
yes.
yeah, but yeah, Ken Dorsey was the fall guy. Do you think he?
Yeah,
Well, do you
was
think he
that
was?
deserved?
Yeah, was that deserved?
I mean, they've obviously had a lot of problems on offense, and Josh Allen's had an excessive number of turnovers. I think actually leads the league in turnovers since he came into the league. But I don't think that's actually the fault of the offensive coordinator. Maybe the offensive coordinator could minimize some of the turnovers a little bit, but it seems more like Josh Allen is more to blame for that
Yeah.
than the offensive coordinators.
Or
But they
perhaps
obviously had problems. They should have been able to score more points against Denver, and they looked terrible. And that game was mostly unwatchable. The offenses were both pathetic in
here's a
most of
thought.
the Monday night game.
If the quarterback is playing badly, is it the quarterback coach's fault? But instead of the quarterback coach losing his job, he is promoted offensive coordinator. The offensive coordinator loses his job. So is this is this we're just moving him up so he doesn't have as much to do, or is it because they think it's really Dorsey's fault? This is Joe Brady. Brady, I think, is most famous for being the LSU coordinator when they won the national championship in 2019 when Joe Burrow was throwing to Jamar Chase and Justin Jefferson and I guess Clyde Edwards-Helaire was on that team, and a lot of had so many weapons on that team.
Basically, a professional team at the college
Yeah, it's
level.
like so it's like no one. I think it also kind of shows that Joe Burrow is one of the great quarterbacks if he has uh, multiple all-world receivers on his team. And this past couple of weeks, he hasn't had both T. Higgins and Jamar Chase on the field very often together, and the last few weeks, and maybe the whole season, his team has maybe not been as good. But I have a Ken Dorsey trivia question for you,
Okay.
Dr. Scaff.
Did you think the firing was justified, or is it just more of just somebody had to go because they felt the urge to get rid of somebody because they've been playing poorly and they're
It's
as of right now outside the playoffs looking in.
it's just they thought they had to do something to placate fans.
Yeah.
I don't know if you want to call it already rearranging the deck chairs on the Titanic, but
Yeah.
it's I wouldn't call the Bills the Titanic quite yet, but the Bills do have a very difficult schedule. I want to ask you about the Bills, and we mentioned the Bengals briefly. We'll talk about the Bills and the Bengals. Both of those teams lost on last second field goals to teams at home that weren't as good as them. I think both teams were also favored by at least 6 points at home. I think Cincinnati was favored by 6.5, and Denver was favored by 7. Was that right? Yeah, that was how it ended up.
And then Baltimore lost too. So like even during this Chiefs bye week, a lot of top contending teams dropped games the Chiefs had moved up somehow. Again, relative to some of the teams that
And
were
Jacksonville got blown out. So like all of
Jacksonville
the
got destroyed too. Yes,
yeah, but that was one I predicted. I predicted
it
San
did.
Francisco to win by more than the spread.
And we'll talk about that when we
We'll talk about that in a second.
because you actually had that as one of your locks even.
One of
So
my locks of the week, and that
good.
was a
Yeah.
super lock. But Ken Dorsey question.
Yes.
So Ken Dorsey, you might remember at one point was the University of Miami quarterback. He was on the team when they won the 2002 national championship. They had like Andre Johnson was one of the receivers, and they had all these great players. Clinton Portis was their running back, and then they had Frank Gore, I think, on that team too, and like all these. Willis McGahee was on that team. Like they're all like these really good players. They lost the next year to I think Ohio State, but Ken Dorsey had played for two NFL teams. He also played for the Toronto Argonauts. But when he played for he played for two NFL teams. He was served as the backup, or was planned to serve as the backup to which future Chiefs quarterbacks? I can get you. Do you want me to name the NFL teams that Ken Dorsey played for?
I'm not going to know any of this.
Okay. He was a seventh round draft pick. He played for the 49ers and the Browns. Which two quarterbacks did
Oh, so how far back was this? This is a ways back then, yeah. I really don't. I'm not even sure how old Ken Dorsey is. So I
Ken
assume he's
Dorsey
younger than me.
is slightly younger than we are.
Okay.
He's 42.
So is he behind Gabbert?
No,
That wouldn't have been. I don't even remember where Gabbert was.
not current Chiefs quarterbacks. He was
Oh yeah.
a more famous quarterback that played for the 49ers for the Chiefs.
Hmm.
And then a less famous quarterback that played for the Browns before he played for the Chiefs.
Hmm.
Both of these quarterbacks were given the at least the opportunity to start in Kansas City.
Oh. Well, you said San Francisco?
Yeah.
Hmm. Hmm. San Francisco and Cleveland. I don't even know. I'm not landed on anybody
Okay.
here.
Well, in Cleveland, it was Brady Quinn. He was
Oh, man, I'd forgotten about
back
that.
in. But San Francisco, you'll kick yourself. He was a backup to Alex Smith at one point before Smith
Oh, okay.
came to the
Yeah.
Chiefs. Um,
Oh, I
uh,
was thinking maybe it was. I was thinking trying to think of more obscure quarterbacks because there were a string of San Francisco quarterbacks that came to Kansas City
yeah.
over the years.
Well, you had Montana and Steve Bono and Elvis Gerback, and
Yeah,
that was the main ones. And
I
then
guess that was that. I was trying to think that there was a more obscure one besides Alex Smith. Yes.
yeah, he was in the 2003 NFL draft
Yeah.
by the 49ers. And he actually started a little bit, but then he uh, started the 2005 season as the third quarterback behind Tim Rattay. I don't know if you heard of Tim Rattay. He was at Tulane University quarterback. He was like a fifth or sixth rounder that started for the 49ers for a bit before Alex Smith came. And then he ended up eventually going to the Browns during the Brady Quinn, Derek Anderson, Charlie Fry era of the Browns, Bruce Gradkowski, people like that. But that was Ken Dorsey. Were there any other games that we want to talk about for last week that we haven't yet? I have one trivia question related to one of these games that featured the return of Kyler Murray from injury, and the Arizona Cardinals defeated the Atlanta Falcons on Sunday.
And we called that one actually too.
We
So
did. The
we
Falcons were
picked that one.
favored by 1.5 on the road, and we both picked uh, the home team.
Yeah.
And the Falcons ended up. It was barely though. The home team was favored by, or actually no, it wasn't. I was thinking they lost by 2, but it was 2 plus 1.5, so we were 3.5 points in our favor. The
Yeah.
Cardinals won against Atlanta.
But
Okay.
we picked them on the money line though, so we expected them to win.
Yes, we did.
Not just cover the spread, but
We
win.
won handily. Yes.
And they did. I believe it was the only upset that I picked correctly.
Well, this was a
On the money
game that
line.
featured Trey McBride, the tight end for the Cardinals. He had 100, I believe 131 yards receiving as a tight end. That was the first Cardinals tight end to have over 100 yards receiving in a game since what year? What year was the last year a Cardinal had over a Cardinals tight end had over 100 yards receiving? And keeping in mind that Zach Ertz has played for the Cardinals the last little bit. I think that Jason Witten, did he play for the Cardinals too, briefly, or is that just maybe I'm just conflating him with Emmitt Smith? But
Yeah. I'm not really coming up with like
he played
thinking
for the
of
Raiders that 1 year, Jason Witten.
Witten. Okay. I mean, most of his career was in Dallas though, so
Yeah. I was thinking he played. No, I was
Ertz, most of the success wasn't, you know,
that was
with
not with the
terrible
Cardinals.
quarterbacks in Arizona.
Yeah,
uh oh, it's gotta be a ways back.
yeah. I would ask it if it wasn't at least a few years removed.
Yeah. I'm gonna say late 80s. I'll say 89.
It is 1989. How did you
I just threw
guess
that out there.
that?
I don't know.
You
What
can't.
who was it? Is it somebody that we even heard? I can't even think of any tight ends from Arizona, like even thinking back through the
His
last
name was
couple of years.
Robert Awalt, Awalt, 105 receiving yards in Week 10 of the 1989 season against the Dallas Cowboys.
So that was just their first 100 yard. I thought it was like 130 plus or something. No, it was just 100 yards, period.
Just 100 yards.
Wow.
The Cardinals were then known as the Phoenix Cardinals. They hadn't changed it to the Arizona Cardinals yet. They had only been in Phoenix like 2 years or 3 years, probably. I think they moved in '87 from St. Louis.
Yeah.
Gene Stallings was the head coach. He was probably most famous for being the head coach at the University of Alabama. I think he won maybe won a national championship with Alabama like in the early '90s.
But who was the
And
QB in that game? In the
who
100
was it?
yard receiving game?
I'm gonna say, is it Neil? Is that still Neil Lomax? Was he still the Cardinals quarterback in 1989?
I don't know.
No, it was probably could have been Gary Hogaboom. I don't even remember him.
No, I don't remember.
He
I
started
guess
13
I
games.
wasn't paying attention to the whole league as much, I guess, in the
I
back.
remember the name Gary Hogaboom because his name is so funny.
Yeah,
Gary Hogaboom. Um,
that's a great name.
Tom Tupa was a quarterback then. He wasn't yet a punter full time. He was still a quarterback.
Yeah.
He started 2 games. Tim Rosenbach. I remember Tim Rosenbach because for some reason he had 2 M's in his name. Tim Rosenbach was his name. He had a 5-15 record as a starter for the uh, Phoenix Cardinals in the late '80s, early '90s. I have this curse of remembering bad quarterbacks' names. I would never have gotten it, but they say, "Oh yeah, that's familiar." Tim Rosenbach.
So is that from like did you have football cards? Or you collecting football cards then?
I was, yeah, I had some
You probably were
cards.
more exposed to it then because of that, but
Yeah,
especially the
yeah,
funny names because you see them written out like on the cards,
that's true. That's probably where,
and then probably sticks with you longer that way
yeah,
too.
yeah. Ed Too Tall Jones was a defensive end on the Cowboys in the game that they played against the Phoenix
Yeah,
Cardinals, who were still in the NFC East in uh in that era, since I guess the Cardinals they hadn't moved, they hadn't realigned to their new geographic home. That was when the Falcons and the Saints, I think, were in the West, and the Cowboys and the Cardinals were in the East. They still haven't figured out that the Dallas Cowboys are not Eastern, but since
they're not
Dallas is a big
they're not
popular
in the
team,
East geographically.
yeah,
What?
it was Dallas really wanted to play the Eastern media markets, so they've
Right.
stayed as the NFC East teams. But yeah, so Trey McBride, first tight end for over 100 receiving yards in 34 years. You'd
Impressive.
think there'd just be some random one, right? Like,
Yeah.
somebody had like there's like a big pass play to a tight end that's like 60 yards, and then it's like 3 receptions, 102 yards, something like that for.
Yeah.
But yeah,
Wow. Man, that's crazy. That's a long time to go without, especially in the modern era where it's so quarterback heavy and passing driven that that's a whole position that they have like basically ignored then for the last 30 plus years. Is that how you would diagnose that looking back at it?
Yeah. Like I'm trying to think, um, who these who would these tight ends would be. I can't think of a at Ertz. I can't think for the life of me really of a Cardinals tight end ever. That's not just not a
That's what
uh,
I was doing. That's why I went back so far, and then it's funny that it landed on the right year though when I guessed it.
yeah. So it was Robert a Walt or a Walt.
Hmm.
Um, I'm just gonna go to Pro Football Reference and just go to a random year and see if I recognize any of the tight ends from
Third, I think.
let's go to like 1998. Um, the position organized by position. So the tight ends on that team were Johnny McWilliams was the starter. Do you remember Johnny McWilliams? Jarius Hayes, Terrius Hardy, or Chris Gedney? Chris Gedney, I kind of remember.
That sounds familiar. Yeah.
Um, Chris Gedney played for the Bears for a while. And then Arizona, but the most receiving yards he ever had in a season was 271. So that shows how much they used tight ends then. And Johnny McWilliams, who was the starter for most of that year, the most tight ends he ever had in a season was 1998 when he had 284 yards receiving. So they did not use much of a tight end in those years. Let's look. Let's just say 2006. Okay.
Well, it looks like the most receptions they've
Oh,
had.
hey, Leonard Pope. I remember Leonard Pope as a tight end for the Cardinals. I would have thought he had a 100-yard game at some point, but he only had 982 yards receiving his whole career. So 247 was actually well because he played for the Chiefs. That's why I remember Leonard Pope. He played for the Chiefs.
Yeah.
But yeah, so
Well, the tight end record for receptions in a season for the franchise of the Cardinals is Zach Ertz 2 years ago with 56 catches in a season.
you would think though that Ertz would have gotten a 100-yard game maybe here and there.
Yeah.
Yeah, 56 yards, 56 catches. So that's almost 4 catches a game. So he's probably got a game with like 8 catches in it. Um, you would think you might get 8 for 100 or something, but yeah, that's insane. That's an insane. I was figuratively blown away by uh that.
Not literally, but just
No, it's not.
figuratively.
No, it's not literally. That would be a um that's a bridge too far. A figurative bridge too far for me to cross.
It looks like he had an 88-yard 8 catch game, 88-yard 8 catch game in 2021,
So that was
and
the
then
close.
a 7 catch 84-yard performance about 7 weeks later after the trade.
That was
Philly to
probably the
Arizona,
closest the
2021.
Cardinals ever came. They were, yeah. I'm sure there was some like sports writer in the, for the Phoenix Mercury News or whatever the San Jose Mercury, Phoenix, whatever the Phoenix paper is. I can't think of what the Phoenix paper is called. There's probably some like old sports writer for them that says, "Oh, there hasn't been a tight end with 100 yards receiving since uh, Awalt back in '89 against the Dallas Cowboys. When's the next one coming?" He had that factoid just ready. Or the Mitch Holtus equivalent of the Cardinals, the radio voice. Do you think the Cardinals radio announcer is as excited about small towns in the American Southwest that a player may have been from as Mitch Holtus is for small towns in the American Midwest that a player or smaller universities?
No, more
No,
than Mitch Holtis. No,
no.
no, for sure not.
Somebody from Baker University or somebody from um, Graceland College, Lamoni, Iowa, something like that.
Yeah, I don't listen to a lot of the radio broadcasts, but I heard one call, I think on the first game of this season, where he yelled something about like the pride of Wichita on a touchdown call anyway.
That's pretty big city. That yeah, probably what you
Yeah.
Smith Center, Kansas, or
Yeah.
yeah, Hershey, Iowa, or something like that. I don't know if there's a Hershey, Iowa. I was just thinking of some random. There's a Hershey,
They're from like
Nebraska.
Lamoni or something. That'd be
Lamoni.
surprising.
Grateful Friends, I believe, was from Lamoni,
There you
Iowa.
go. See, you know somebody from there.
Yeah, was that where Graceland College is? There's some
Ooh,
weird.
I don't know. I just know that's the first town you get to when you cross into Iowa on I-35.
Graceland. It is Lamoni, Iowa. Yes.
There you go.
It also has a Graceland University now. It also has some affiliation because it's Community of Christ, the former reorganized Latter-day Saints church that also has some affiliations, I believe, in Independence. So maybe that's why I remembered where it was. But um, any other NFL action from last week that struck you?
I mean, I think really what it was the crazy upsets, like the late uh game deciding, plays were really prominent, I think, in this week with
I believe there were 7 games where a field goal was kicked as time expired to win the game.
yeah,
6 on
including the Monday
Sunday
night
and then one
game.
on Monday night.
Yeah.
And both the Bills and the Bengals lost on game winning field goals.
Yes.
Um, and so the Bills are 5-5. The Bengals are 5-4. Both of those teams are on the outside looking in currently in the AFC playoff race. Which of those teams do you think has the better shot at making the playoffs? Follow-up question: is it more likely that both teams make the playoffs, or both teams are out of the playoffs in the AFC?
Well, yeah, this gets pretty tough then, doesn't it? Uh, I guess what Cincinnati actually has the tiebreaker, as they did beat Buffalo a couple weeks ago. But and they have a half game lead because they played one fewer game. So it seems like
Mhm.
Cincinnati has the edge as of right now. I think they both have pretty tough schedules.
We could say something different come Thursday night if the Ravens beat the Bengals.
Right. That may even things up then to some extent. But so I mean, as of right now, I'd say like Cincinnati has the edge because they have that, head-to-head matchup already decided. But yeah, they both have pretty tough schedules, I think, coming up. That's what uh is going to be a bigger factor than anything else. But it's probably actually more likely that they both miss than both make the playoffs, especially with the AFC North division not being the disaster that we and everyone else kind of expected coming
Yeah.
into the season. They're pretty competitive.
Yeah, right now the Bengals are last place in the AFC North. According to the New York Times playoff projections, they have a 44% chance of making the playoffs, and that's last in the AFC North. The Ravens have an 89% chance of making the playoffs, and the Browns have an 84% chance of making the playoffs. And even your hated, lowly Pittsburgh Steelers have a 61% chance of making the playoffs, according to the New York Times model. So that's but the Bills are even worse than have a worse shot according to the New York Times than the Bengals. They only have a 19% chance of making the playoffs. That's
Wow.
below the Chargers at 31% and the Colts at 28%, alongside those other teams, that we've mentioned that are higher. The Texans also have a 51% chance of making the playoffs, according to the New York Times. The
Yeah,
Chiefs are
and some of that maybe
so
because like Jacksonville just dropped their game this week. Maybe that South division is actually more up for grabs than it was. So maybe one team takes that division or charges to the lead, and then somebody else is left out, and maybe another spot's open. But yeah, I don't know. It's going to be pretty tough for both of those teams to make it in, I think, right now.
yeah, it's the NFC is a little bit more cut and dried appearing. Basically, there are 7 teams with a 73% chance or greater of making the playoffs. And it's
Yeah.
the Eagles, the Cowboys, the Lions, the Vikings, who now have an 84% chance of making it, way up from what it was a few weeks ago. The Saints, 73, 49ers, 98, Seahawks, 75.
Well, winning 2 games when the team could be in full disarray certainly has to help their odds. Because I don't think they were expected to win either of those games, and they won both.
Speaking of winning 2 games in full, when the team's maybe in full disarray, the Raiders have won 2 in a row. Now they're at 5-5, but the New York Times model only has them as a 4% chance of making the
Really?
playoffs, which is odd. Well, I guess they play the Chiefs twice.
Yeah.
They probably still play the Eagles and the Cowboys, perhaps. So maybe they just think there's a lot of losses that are going to be there.
That's yeah.
Um, yeah. So the Raiders, they play at the Dolphins, then home against the Chiefs, uh, and then it looks like they have their bye in week 13. Then they play home against the Vikings, home against the Chargers, at Kansas City, at in Indianapolis, home against the Broncos. So
That's not that bad. That
it's
seems like about a
tough.
4% chance.
I know, yeah, I'm surprised it's only 4%, but maybe it takes into account that they don't have a good quarterback. Well, they have Aiden O'Connell as quarterback, and they have play the Chiefs twice, I guess.
Yeah.
But okay, the Bengals. I think
Oh,
the Bengals
they've already
are
had their
the
bye
toughest
though, haven't
schedule.
they?
The Raiders they're 5-5. They play 10 games, so they don't have their bye yet.
Oh right. Oh yes, yes, yes. Gotcha. Yes. Wrong way. I flipped it. Yes.
Yeah,
Should we run through our picks then from last
yeah.
week?
Let's run through our picks. Let's run through our picks. We've already kind of hinted that we were did fairly well. We were each 2-1 this week. I think that's the first week we've both been over for a while,
In a while, yeah.
over 500. And
Week 7, we were 5-1 combined.
oh,
So,
okay. So we were 5-1. So this is
but
four.
that's 3 weeks ago.
That's
So
3 weeks ago. It seems like a longer. That was that was the week where you thought you were 1-2, but it turned out to be 2-1, and maybe that's what I was thinking.
yeah.
So I already mentioned that I picked San Francisco over Jacksonville as one of my locks of the week. They were only favored by 3 points, and they won by 31. That was an easy victory. I think Jacksonville is not that good a team. I don't think they have a great offense. I think their defense is just okay. But they play in the AFC South, which was thought to be an easy division, and now it's maybe not quite as easy looking. But yeah, they got run. I think they also ended up playing the 49ers at the wrong time. 49ers are coming off a bye, and they had lost 3 straight, and they were getting healthier. And this, I don't think they weren't in the mood to lose a 4th straight
Well, they
game.
got Debo Samuel back on offense, but they also got Chase Young via that trade on defense, and their defense looked really good in that game too. So
Yeah.
that certainly makes things more challenging for opponents of theirs.
And Purdy seemed to have a bounce back week as well.
No
So
turnovers. That's
no
the
turnovers. Christian McCaffrey broke his long touchdown streak, but other than that, it was pretty rosy.
despite them trying very hard to keep that
Yeah,
intact. Did you see that he was like still in there like late in the fourth,
he
even though
was, and that's a little risky, you think, with McCaffrey because he's so injury prone.
mm,
Just let it go. It's not a streak that anybody cares about. I
yeah.
don't think, is it?
Except for him, maybe. I mean,
It's
maybe
not Joe. It's not Joe DiMaggio's 56-game hitting streak or something like that. I
yeah.
don't. It's, it just. I don't know. Yeah. How about your first? Your first bet of the week?
My first pick was a loss, I guess, for me. And it's one that I'm okay with taking too, I think, because I had Cincinnati -6.5 at Houston. Houston ended up surprising, I think, most people, not just covering that 6.5 points, but winning the game outright. And yeah, so I didn't come anywhere close to that. The final score in that game was 30-27 in Cincinnati as a Houston victory. So, I mean, great for Houston. Not what I expected to see, but I will take that because I don't want Cincinnati to win.
Yeah, it was
I just
one of those
expected
games.
him to. That's why I bet on it.
Yeah, it was one of those games that I also thought. Well, I thought I was going to thread the needle. I thought Houston might keep it close, and Cincinnati would win. But ended up being Houston both won and covered the spread. But I was also glad to see Cincinnati lose that game, just because I think they're more of a competition for the Chiefs down the road. Um, my second, you started with your loss. I'm going to start with my two wins and then go to my loss because it happened that way chronologically. Both of my wins came in the 1 o'clock window, and I also am happy that this game turned out the way it did. It was very, very, very close. I ended up sweeping this game on the big board as well. I predicted Pittsburgh -3 over Green Bay. They won with a final score of 23-19, so they won by 4, and that was thanks to because they had an interception in the end zone to end the game, and so they won by 4. I had them by 3. I think they're one of those teams that we both think is not very good, but they seem to win games anyway. Maybe because teams play to their level or they like to muddy it up. I think Green Bay's just a bad team, so I don't think that quite holds there.
Yeah.
But there was
Denver and Pittsburgh, it seems both. They can seem to trap better opponents into losses by
yeah.
making the game very murky.
Oh, I missed the over under. I thought it went over. It was only 38.5 under over under.
Yeah.
So it went up to 42. So I thought maybe it was going to be 23 to 15 game, I guess.
Yeah.
uh, or 20, yeah, but anyway, Pittsburgh won again against Green Bay, covering the spread. So I'm good. I think I've been good lately at betting against Green Bay and betting for Pittsburgh. So you might be able to see where my bets are going this coming week. But
Yes.
those are my two victories, were Pittsburgh -3 and San Francisco -3. How about your second your second bet?
My second pick was on the final international game, I believe, for the NFL season. I had Indy -1.5 at New England in Frankfurt again, right? Was that where that one
Yeah, it was
was?
the same. Yes, Frankfurt again.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Another awful game to watch. Indy ended up winning 10-6, comfortably covering that 1.5 point spread, Mike.
Yeah, so comfortable.
Yes. In a very uneventful game where Mac Jones was benched for, I think, the third time this season for throwing a late
Yes, for Bailey
interception.
Zappi. And then Bailey Zappi comes in and throws that
Throws
big
maybe an even
spike
worse interception. So,
interception.
yeah. Yes. Ugly game, poorly performed by both teams, really. And I don't know. That doesn't really, make the sport look that great when the game is played that poorly in an international setting.
But
Why were these teams even there?
but maybe because Europeans are used to lower scoring soccer games, they wanted, well, 10-6. That's a very high scoring game for foosball. But
Yes,
so maybe that's what they were saying.
possibly.
Possibly. I don't really think so either. But
Uh,
but yeah, New England is just playing bad, it seems like, this year. Is Bill Belichick, is he on his way out, do you think, or is he just going to be around, and maybe they'll get some new quarterback? Maybe they'll bring in Caleb Williams or one of the hotshot quarterbacks from college this year to
yeah, Shador
become Tom
Sanders
Brady.
or something like that.
Yeah.
I don't know. Yeah, it does seem really surprising that they're, benching um McCorkle Jones uh during games, but then he always starts the next one. So it doesn't seem like there's really any consequence for poor in-game performance, except for not having to finish that game. I guess.
Yeah. He seems to go out like maybe they just have like a first half quarterback and a second half quarterback. Maybe that's what they.
Maybe that's what they need to try, just to do something different. But it just seems surprising that Belichick's willing to keep sticking to this strategy that doesn't seem to be working at all this season. With I think they're what 2-8
2-8, yeah.
now in the season, which is
They are
got to be
basically
what Belichick's worst performance since what
this
his
Cleveland Browns days.
Cleveland days. Yeah, it's got to be right.
Yeah, yeah. So they are not very good at all.
How about your third
My
pick?
third pick was I predicted Seattle over Washington. Seattle was favored by 6. They did win. They only won by a field goal though, so they didn't cover. I got the money line right on that one, but I did not cover. Washington kept it close. It was another one of those game-winning field goals at the end that Seattle scored. So 29-26 Seattle, but alas, it was not 6. It was not a 7-point victory for. If they had scored a touchdown at the final second, maybe that would have been. Although I don't know if they would have kicked the extra point or not in the final second. They might have, and they might not have done that.
They would
You
have
know,
had to score with more than a few seconds left, just so they.
yeah, yeah. If they had scored with 2 seconds left, they would have kicked the extra point because they would have to kick off
Yeah.
later. But yeah, how about your third pick? You're going to end on a good note.
Yes. So I had the Raiders plus 1.5 against the Jets in Vegas. Another hideous game to watch was the Sunday night game. Raiders ended up winning that game outright. 16-12 was the final. Did you watch any of that one?
No, I didn't watch
Yeah.
any of it. I heard a little bit. I guess I did. Maybe I did watch a little bit on my phone, but it was not a good game either.
Yeah.
Or actually, yeah, a Sunday night game. I didn't watch any Sunday night. I was watching a movie or something with MJ. So I didn't see any of it.
Yeah. Yeah. Another poor game, but came out in my favor. So I will take it.
Yes.
Were there other games that that drew your attention to this week?
I I guess the big game was the Cleveland Baltimore game.
Yeah.
That Baltimore was seen as this kind of juggernaut in the last few weeks, and then their defense wasn't allowing any points. Their offense was scoring a bunch of points. Their offense scored quite a few points against Cleveland, which supposedly has a very good defense, but they allowed 33 points to Deshaun Watson and the Cleveland Browns at home. And ended up losing 33-31. So that was a little bit of surprise. I actually, though, I will tell you that I predicted this game to happen. So this was my upset of the week, and
Yeah.
one where I swept both the spread. No, I didn't. I swept the spread. The money. I did not get the over under because I thought it was going to be under. But this was a week where I decided to go basically all under, except the first game I picked over, and I missed that. Then I went all under, and I missed most of my over unders this week. So I ended up on the whole on the big board with just under the money going in. I think I lost like $50. So basically broke even. You basically broke even too, but you were a little bit on the plus side as usual, Dr. Scaff. What's the method to your success?
This week it was basically just almost random odds anyway. But the last 2 weeks I'd been like around 70% correct picks. This week I was only at 57%, which was enough to get. I was up $158 for the week, which is still positive though. So that's good, but not as good as last week.
Yeah, I was down 92.
And
I was down 52, but I was down 92.
And the over unders were what did me in this week too, but not as badly as they did you in, I think. So that was
No, yeah, a couple. Yeah, I think if I had a couple more, you had 7 out of the 14 over unders. I only had 5. So if I had 7, I would have been right around where you ended up. But I might do a lot of unders again this week. I'm not sure, but none of my locks of the week for next week are going to be over under.
Well, the last several weeks, the unders had done pretty
very well. Yeah.
So the unders were 10-3 in week 9, 8-8 week 8, 7-6 week 7, 13-2 in week 6. But then this week the overs were 8-6. So this is the first week the overs have won in the last 5 weeks.
Well, that's because I decided to do it. I'm sure if whatever I pick next week it's gonna go the opposite. So, but then if I do the Costanza, psych myself out and do that, then it will do another switcheroo on me. So I believe cursed this season, and this is why I should not become a professional gambler. It doesn't look like,
Or
unless I
maybe you
don't
should
pick a few games a week. That's where I should stop.
make the picks and then reverse most of them, like, and see if that has an effect.
If I reverse most of them, I would probably pick the wrong ones too.
You end
And
up with getting all of them wrong instead of
yes.
the ones you reverse would be the ones that you should have kept. Yes.
Speaking of getting them all wrong, should we move on to next week and talk about our week 11 preview?
Sure.
Or maybe before we talk about our bets, I think there's one game, of course, we're going to look forward to the most, and that is Philadelphia, Kansas City on Monday night. Philadelphia coming to Arrowhead, a rematch of Super Bowl 57. Both teams are coming off a bye, just like they did in the Super Bowl. So both teams should be equally rested, equally prepared, equally ready. Do you think the Chiefs are going to pull it out on Monday night? This coming Monday night
What's
against
Andy Reid versus his own team, Kelsey versus Kelsey. There's
yeah,
so many stories around it that it's going to have to be a an epic game, and it'll probably be a giant dud. And because it's typically you expect that the Chiefs are worried that they might face Philly in the Super Bowl, so they're not going to want to show them anything in this game. Is that what you expect to see for this game?
but this is an interesting tidbit. So Andy Reid is currently the all-time winningest coach for the Philadelphia Eagles. He's won 130 games as a Philadelphia coach. He is tied with Hank Stram as the all-time winningest coach for the Chiefs at 124. So if he wins this game, he becomes the all-time winningest coach for the Chiefs, and he would defeat his old team to do it. So he would be the all-time winningest coach for two franchises, which is the only person who's done it before, and he would beat his old team in doing it. So I think the Chiefs are going to try to play hard this game, and at least only enter the Andy Reid gentlemanly home stretch at the end when the game is there. So I do predict the Chiefs victory. But I wouldn't be surprised though if it went the other way, unfortunately. But I think Andy Reid off a bye is usually very good.
Yes.
So I like the Chiefs. I think they're favored by 3. It's not one of my locks.
Yeah, it's a very modest line. Chiefs by 3. The money line's close. Plus 130 for Philly, minus 154 for the Chiefs. Over under is not exceptionally high at 46.5. Not crazy. So like the defenses are going to be probably more featured than they were in the last meeting of these two teams.
It was a 35-32, I believe. So that would have been a 67 over under. Yeah, I don't think it's going to be as high scoring, but who knows?
Yeah. But I mean, both defenses may have actually improved since the Super Bowl.
And it seems like both offenses have perhaps regressed since the Super Bowl too. So
yeah,
the Eagles are sometimes struggling to score, and the Chiefs are sometimes struggling to score points. Neither quarterback has been quite as sharp, it seems like, as last year either. So, but it's going to be a great game, I think. But it's not one of the games we bet on. Should we talk about our bets for the week, and then we can talk about some other happenings in the NFL next week? How about your first lock of the week, Dr. Scaff?
My first lock, I'm going to a team that just came off of a very large spread anyway, with Dallas being favored last week by 16.5 points. This week favored by only 10.5 points at Carolina. It seems like the Giants may actually be a better team, maybe minus the quarterback situation, at least anyway, than Carolina. So I'm a little surprised the line is this close. So I'm taking Dallas minus 10.5.
Yeah, it's a big spread on the road, but yeah, Carolina, I guess they won a game or two recently. They beat the Texans a couple weeks ago.
Yeah,
but they're still the Carolina
for their one win.
For their one win. Yeah, did they have a bye last week? Was it Carolina with a bye?
No.
Who'd they play?
The last week was all the good teams that had byes.
Oh yeah,
Miami, Philly.
Oh, yeah, Carolina played on Thursday. They played on Thursday. That's right. That's why I forgot. They lost to the Bears.
They lost to the Bears. Yeah.
So yeah, so this team lost to the Bears. Yeah, 10.5 is kind of is modest. I would have thought maybe it would be at least 13 by 2 touchdowns probably, But
Yeah.
yeah, so I guess if I had to make a decision on a big spread like that, maybe I would go. Maybe I would go with Dallas as well. That
I
seems
tend to avoid those for like the locks at least anyway, but they played so well last week against the Giants that seems like they're back to being, rolling again. So maybe I don't
yeah,
know. They'll continue that for at least another week anyway with a weak opponent here. So
yeah. I picked another big spread for my first lock of the week, and that was Las Vegas at Miami. Miami's actually favored by 11 and a half at home, which I think is pretty high, especially because Las Vegas has won their last two games. They're 5-5. Miami they are coming off a bye, but Miami's struggled against teams with 500 records or above so far this year. So
and decent defenses, and it seems like the Raiders have a decent defense. So
yeah, and they can score points if they have to. I think the Dolphins will win, but I wouldn't be surprised if the Raiders kept it close. I also wouldn't be shocked if the Raiders actually won that game, because I think the Dolphins are, maybe their psyche is a little bit damaged by some of the losses that they've had recently, and the fact that again, I don't want to wish injury on anybody, but they've been injury prone, and one of the people who hasn't gotten injured this year is Tua Tagovailoa, who is historically very injury prone. So I think without him, they're lost too. So and the Raiders are always kind of a little bit dirty, a little bit cheat. You never want to, I think, count them out on these sorts of things. So I don't really think there'll be any injuries, but major injuries. But I do think maybe I could see at least keeping within 10. I think I would have guessed the spread would have been maybe 9, something like that. So I'm 8, 9, something, maybe a little bit more than a touchdown. But
yeah,
I like the Raiders at least to keep it somewhat close in Miami.
and it is in Miami too. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. How about your second pick, Dr. Scaff?
My second pick, I'm going to uh Seattle is favored by just a single point on the road against the Rams. Seems as though Stafford is going to be back, but if he's not 100% or if he can't play or can't play the entire game, I think the drop off is just so big between him and his next quarterback up. I don't know where the Rams score points against a decent defense like the Seahawks have, at least anyway. So yeah, I've got Seattle -1 on the road.
Yeah, it seems like the Rams started out pretty hot. Puka Nakua's cooled off quite a bit. Seems like Cooper Kupp hasn't really taken off as a receiver this year. The Rams just aren't scoring a lot of points. They've had some injuries at running back. They've had some
Yeah.
injuries at quarterback position. Maybe again, yeah, maybe Stafford's coming back, but sometimes your first game back isn't your best one anyway.
And it's
So
a
yeah,
thumb
I don't think
injury
I don't think
too,
that's
and
a
that
bad
can be
pick.
really weird to, come out of, I think, too. So
Yeah,
hmm, I don't know.
yeah. Well, I'm also kind of sticking in Los Angeles, or with a Los Angeles team for my second bet, and going against the Green Bay Packers. The Chargers are favored by 3 in Green Bay. The Chargers lost a tough one to Detroit on a last second field goal, 41-38. I think the Chargers have a great offense, and I think they can score a lot of points against Green Bay. I think their defense isn't that great, but Green Bay's offense also isn't that great. So I think they could win that game and win it going away at Lambeau against this Green Bay Packers team. So I like them to win and win comfortably in Green Bay. The weather's not going to be that bad probably. It's still early enough that even the Chargers can probably handle a November in Lambeau.
Yeah, and the Chargers defense is actually fairly
They
decent.
have good name players anyway. You'd think you have
Yeah.
Khalil Mack and uh, Joey Bosa and Derwin James and all these guys that are pretty good players, but they haven't put anything together.
Well, what was it? It was 2 weeks ago, in the game against the Jets, where the Chargers won pretty handily. And they held the Jets to just 6 points, but the Jets' offense is not very good. But the defense did most of the scoring, I think, in that game for the Chargers. So if they, if their defense plays anything like that,
Mhm.
Green Bay's offense isn't that great. So just a decent defense should be enough to keep them down, you would guess.
Yeah, I think Green Bay is over. People are overly optimistic against for Green Bay. They kind of forget that I think that Matt LaFleur is not a very good coach. He just had Aaron Rodgers on his team, and like, of course, your offense is going to be decent if you have Aaron Rodgers as quarterback and he's not injured. So they'll, but they still weren't able to score a ton of points, and they had a fairly strong defense, but I don't think they have that. Their defense isn't quite as good this year, and their offense is a couple of steps below, at least to put it generously, below what it has been the last few years. So I they start, Green Bay kind of fooled everybody. It seemed like because they started out strong, they won the first 2 games, but they've been pretty bad since. So I like the Chargers there. How about your final block
I was
of?
going to add one more point here, but just as a question though for you, is Matt LaFleur at the top of the Warning Track Power Hour most hated coach now? Is that who's up there, or is there someone else
Ooh,
up there? Because most of our old candidates have all been relieved of their duties at the NFL level with McDaniels and Nathaniel Hackett over the last
hmm.
year or so. So yeah, is LaFleur high on that
He
list or number
is
one?
up there for me. I think he's overrated for sure. Um, it's hard to say because I guess I didn't dislike any of the new hires as much as I did, that McDaniels and Hackett year. Maybe Brandon Staley might be there with the Chargers, never being able to get anything done with them. So he's probably I'm sure he's on the hot seat, but he might be uh, up there as well. But I don't. But maybe it's because the Chiefs play the Chargers in the division so much. I don't want to speak too much ill of Brandon Staley because I want him to stay as the Chargers coach, because I think the Chargers are kind of a sleeping giant, and if they can get any semblance of good coaching, they can probably do, really challenge the Chiefs.
They
And
become scarier immediately.
yeah,
Yeah.
so yeah, especially with Justin Herbert still on his rookie salary deal for next, at least this year and next year, I think,
Yeah.
and then it starts to go up, but just like Joe Burrow. Um, so I like having Staley where he is because he always makes some dumb decision, and he's supposedly a defensive minded coach with the defense doesn't play ever plays that well, and so I like maybe I think Staley's maybe one of the worst, but I think Matt LaFleur is probably the worst coach that people think is good, and I
Yeah.
I think his shortcomings were really revealed in the playoffs, and maybe yeah. So I don't think he's going to get a team over the hump and win Super Bowls. And he's
Yeah.
stuck with Jordan Love this year. Love hasn't been that terrible, but I think I think with an average quarterback, I don't think the Packers can do a lot.
Well, they're not really contenders, I don't think, until
Yeah.
somebody emerges. But we need to have that most hateable coach index, the MHCI, the Morning Track Power Hour.
I'll have to go
MHCI.
through all of them and see. I think maybe some people perhaps thought that Mike McCarthy in Dallas was maybe the most overrated, the former Green Bay
Yeah.
coach,
Well, so
but
you're going overrated. I was saying hateable though, so that was what.
hateable. I don't necessarily hate Matt LaFleur.
No,
Uh,
no, they don't have, they just have to be like dislikable essentially. So like
okay, I yeah,
hateable, not hated, but hateable.
yeah,
They have
I
the
guess
quality potential of being hated.
okay.
You know,
I like to think of them as just in quantity as good or bad rather than I love or hate them.
or
But
most bad-mouthed by us.
yeah,
There you go.
who is the current well, it was Taysom Hill, and it was
Yeah,
I think Mac Jones is probably our
as a player. So maybe
player.
Belichick then, maybe climbing the list on our.
I think Belichick just might be washed up. more than anything. He was a
Yeah.
great coach, but he also still is their kind of GM and coach. So maybe if he became one or the other rather than both, the
Yeah.
Patriots might do better. So I think he's getting older, and maybe he can't quite keep an eye on personnel the way he used to be able to. And so if I were him, maybe I'd just concentrate on the coaching on the field,
Or
because
whichever one he wants to do.
whichever one he wants to. I think he wants to be he wants to pass Don Shula as the number one winningest coach. So I think that's what he wants to stay coach rather than become.
It's going to be hard to do in that with 4 wins a year or so, though. That's
Yeah.
Takes a lot longer that way.
How about your lock of the week? Number 3.
Third pick, I'm going to the let's see, what is that? The early afternoon, well, the 3 p.m. slot, the one game in the 3 p.m. slot this week. That's not the 2 more games at 3:30. But the Tampa San Francisco game, San Francisco is pretty heavily favored. They're a 10.5-point favorite. But with San Francisco's new defense with Chase Young, I think this is going to be a pretty low scoring game for Tampa, at least anyway. But I'm not sure how many points they're going to be able to put up, in this one. Over under numbers 41.5 this game, and I'm taking the under on this game.
So you think it might be a 38-3 victory for 49ers?
Somewhere in that range, yeah.
28-10 type of game, maybe.
Yeah.
Something like that. I could see that. I like, if I had to go one way or the other, I'd probably take the under. I think I might do the all unders again this week, just to
just expecting the reversal to come back.
Yeah,
the door to swing back the other way very hard.
Yeah, because I know if I switch, it's going to swing back. So it's going to swing. It's going to do whatever I'm not doing. So I'm just going to stick with the under, because it's not going to stay. It's not. They're not going to all go over the rest of the season. It's not going to do that. So,
right.
I'm going to under. I think under is right 2% of the time anyway. So I'm gonna stick with the under.
Well, it looks like the average over under is up a full point this week. Part of that may be, though, because the teams that are in the buys this week versus last week. Last week the Chiefs, Dolphins, and Eagles were all in the bye, and so having those teams in this week, and like New England, Atlanta, Indy, and New Orleans are the 4 teams that are out. So, that over under number is going to be higher.
That makes sense. It could be. It also could be that I think people are a little more optimistic because overs were winning last week, so they might be more likely to bet over again because it's the hot, right in the hot streak or something like that.
Yeah.
Speaking of hot streaks, where are we on the season in our locks of the week? I think I'm 2 games over 500.
You are 16-14 plus $200. I'm 15-15.
Even Steven.
Yeah.
Well, we'll see if we could go even higher over next week. So maybe I can end up being 19-14, a comfortable win. So if I go 3-0, which I certainly will. And
but to do that, we need to know what your third pick is.
Oh yeah, I didn't even reveal my third pick. I hinted at it earlier because I talked about how much I enjoyed betting against the Green Bay Packers, mainly out of spite. I have it towards Green Bay, and betting on the Pittsburgh Steelers because I don't understand why they win, but they win, and because I think it flummoxes Dr. Scaff there, at least maybe vexes. We talked about the difference between vexing and flummoxing.
Yes.
I think it probably more vexes you than flummoxes you, but
it may be actually flummox. It's very confusing.
Yeah,
that's what
you don't have the anger, but you have a little bit of anger though. That
it is. It's borderline flummox and vexed.
Okay, if there were only a word that was between those two that also ended in X,
right? We'll have to figure out what that is if there is another word. We'll have to get our thesauruses out for this.
Flavexed or something like that. That would.
Oh, just make a combo word.
A portmanteau. Yeah.
Yes. Portmanteau, that thing.
Yeah. So I am. So Pittsburgh is a 4-point underdog to Cleveland. Pittsburgh already beat Cleveland earlier this season. I also think that it's possible that either Deshaun Watson will be out because he has an ankle injury that he had MRI'd yesterday or today. And if he's playing, he might also be limited. Again, if your ankle's hurt, one of Watson's best things is his mobility. So he's kind of been a little bit gimpy this whole season. So and Pittsburgh always keeps it close. So 4 points, that means I get the field goal. So even if they keep it within a field goal and lose, it's still on the spread. I'm still happy. So Pittsburgh at Cleveland. It's not like it's a far road game to go for them, and they're it's 2 hours up the road from Pittsburgh. I'm sure the environment's going to be hostile, but it's not like there's a travel issue or anything like that. So I like Pittsburgh at least to keep it close and maybe even to win outright. I haven't decided yet if I'm going to pick them to win outright, but Cleveland, it seems like whatever team seems to be the hot team in the AFC North, that team loses the next week. So, it was good. It was Baltimore and Cincinnati were seen as the two hottest teams in football. Each of them lost this past week, and I wouldn't be surprised that Cleveland loses to the Steelers. Even though the Steelers are winning, nobody thinks of them as a great team. So that's my third pick of the week. So that will hopefully send me up to 19-14 on the season, and with a commanding profit one, theoretically one. So maybe I should become a amateur gambler on a couple of games per week, but avoid being the
making all the picks.
Whereas Dr. Scaff, I think volume is helping you rather than hurting you.
It does seem to go in my favor that way anyway. Did you
At
see
least so far?
There was a big bet, I guess, a single game parlay that paid off with the Texans win against the Bengals.
Ooh.
The four legs were Texans to beat the Bengals, over 44.5. Running back Devin Singletary has a touchdown, and over 51.5 rushing yards. So the late field goal to win tripped this bet. That was looks like it was like a $500,000 bet.
Wow.
Which then paid off $5.5 million.
Wow. I would have thought maybe somebody bet, a few thousand and won 15 times that. But wow, that's a lot of money.
Yeah. Can you imagine dropping 500,000? I guess if you're Jimbo Fisher and getting paid $70 million to not coach, maybe you start dropping $500,000.
That's still 1/152nd of your nest egg, though. I don't know if I'd drop almost 2/3 of 1% of my net worth on one football game, especially if it was a parlay, because like that seems insane. I think any parlay, but because you already are the odds are against you on regular bets
on a single bet
because of the juice. You have to be, even if it's not a coin flip. And then if you get if it's a if it's two-part parlay, it's not that you win 4 times the money. You only win maybe 2.5 times,
3 times
the money, and then if you
it's a
keep going
decreasing
out,
multiplier.
Yeah, you should be 16. You should win 16 times your money, if or get 16 times.
But if you just made the 4 individual bets, you wouldn't have won 10x.
Yeah,
this bet though. But it is a worse payout than straight up odds that a casino won't give you.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Right. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. Well, we agree on that. We're not parlayers, but maybe we will be in the Super Bowl, because those are always just it's more fun maybe to have the parlay. But
it is. And so if I'm in Vegas or I'm at a casino and I make a bet, I usually make one parlay, but I don't put a lot I it.
Yeah, $5 or something like that.
Right, exactly.
Yeah, and
I've never had one pay out though. Although I did pick an entire UFC card correctly one time, which I thought was cool.
I remember that.
but it was just on an ESPN, pool thing, but it wasn't. I should have done that as a parlay. That would have paid out really nicely.
Yeah,
That was
yeah.
like 10. That was like 10 fights.
Go to the track and do the exacta or something like that.
Right.
Well, should we wrap things up here?
I think so.
Well, if you're not, maybe if you're going to the track this weekend or watching, probably more likely watching the weekend's football games, and if you want to place a bet, you can rely on our judgment or simply go against it and probably do just as well or better. But we here at the Morning Trek Power appreciate your patronage, your viewership, and on that note, what I, as always, am Dr. Michael Werman, Esquire. He, as always, is Dr. Andrew Scaff. We are the Morning Trek Power Hour. Please like and or subscribe to our YouTube channel or any of our podcasts on the various podcast delivery systems. And we appreciate, as I said again, we appreciate your viewership, listenership, audio ship, spaceship, something or other, ship, the shipping container ship. You missed an exciting retelling of the Suez Canal shipping container mishap incidents. But anyway,
The Ever Given, yes.
yeah, it was fascinating. I'm sure our discussion of that discussion is only about 70% as interesting as that discussion itself was. So consider yourselves unlucky, just like I have been unlucky on this year's bets. But as always, we wish you a good day.